All right, let's get started. Welcome again to what seems like our daily Thursday night meetings, Zoom meetings with the New York Giants Preservation Society. Welcome to all returning guests, and welcome to some new people here tonight. Thank you all for coming. And Sam, despite everything, I gotta say another shout out to you. Thanks for coming. Tonight we're gonna have Dr. Larry Hogan. But before that, let me just go over some news, what's going on. Next week, and he's on the call tonight, is Alex Drew, 26 in a row. Brand new book, should be great. Following week, February 4th, we have Perry Barber, who, if this was Hollywood Square, she's on the bottom. Got a nice background, Perry. Perry is wonderful entertainer. She most knowledgeable, Jeopardy champion, singer, does it all, knows it all. And she wasn't here last week. I would not call her a female umpire. She's just an umpire.
Thank you.
Female, she'll get mad at me, so I will not do that. Then we're going to skip a week, and then February 18th, we will have Dave Lippman, who was a contributor to the team that nobody will ever forget, the 1951 New York Giants. Just as an aside, on February 11th, I'm going to conduct a meeting. It is, I will send out invites. It is really going to be a San Francisco Giant Hot Stove League meeting. We were talking about this, and some other people approached me about it, and it'll be just a wrap session on the upcoming San Francisco Giant season. So please do not be offended. But I'm trying to have, three meetings a month out of 4. So we're going to use that one for that. We really have been having basically 4 or 5 meetings a month. So that's what we're going to try to do. Tonight, it is my privilege to invite back somebody, Dr. Larry Hogan. Larry spoke at one of our Bergino Baseball Club meetings many, many years ago. And then the pleasure seeing him upstate in Cooperstown when he was signing his book that he's going to be talking about tonight in front of the library in the Hall of Fame. And Ed Logan was there with him, and it was really, a wonderful event. And I am so glad he's feeling better. So tonight he's going to be discussing his book, So Many Seasons in the Sun. Fantastic book about all the clubhouse men, and Ed Logan's father and grandfather are part of this. Larry is also an expert historian on the Negro League, so he's going to spend some time talking about the New York Giants who played in the Negro Leagues. And, we had discussed with Bill Kendrick about the statistics. Larry's going to give his views on what he thinks the Negro League statistics being incorporated into the Major League Baseball statistics. So it's my privilege and pleasure to reintroduce Dr. Larry Hogan. Doc, all yours.
Well, you got to save your applause until we're finished. You might want, and this is kind of an aside off of what Gary just said. That wonderful time that we had up in Cooperstown with Ed Logan, and one of the things that Ed connected into was his grandfather's hat that he wore in the clubhouse all the years that he was a manager, clubhouse manager. And Ed was just so pleased to be able to do that. And it's nice that the Cooperstown Hall of Fame has something like that. Now, I've been thinking through how I should start out tonight in 2 ways. I was a teacher for God knows how many years, like 42, 43, 44 years. And as a teacher, you give out assignments. Well, at the end of the program tonight, I'm going to have some assignments for you people to do. So I'm warning you ahead of time. But let me start out with the word fun. F-U-N, fun. I've written several books, and in one way or another, I've had fun with all of them. some blood, sweat, toil, and tears too, but fun with all of them. But the one that we're focusing in on tonight, So Many Seasons in the Sun, a century and more of baseball conversations with baseball's greatest clubhouse managers. Oh, goodness gracious, this was fun. Conversations, that's what I had with this book. And I'll get you into some of those conversations as we move through the program tonight. But let me define for you what I mean by fun. And as you listen to what I'm going to say, you think about for a little bit the great team that could have come out of the names that I'm going to run past you. I'm going to run all of them past you, but here, Ralph Branca, Clyde King, Monty Irvin, Joe Morgan, Dave Righetti, Herman Franks, Fran Healy, Alvin Dark. I know you recognize so many of these names. Roger Craig, Gaylord Perry, Jim Davenport, Mike McCormick, Atlee Hammaker, Tim Haller, Gary Matthews, and it goes on and on. Mike McCormick, I said, Hobie Landreth, Atlee Hammaker, Orlando Cepeda, Joe Morgan, Jim Bouton, Billy Crystal. Well, Crystal wasn't a ball player, but he was a big and still is a big baseball fan. That's why I had so much fun, because I was able to converse with all of the people who you just heard the name of, and more than that. So it's really a fun journey that I was on and remains a fun experience with me. This program has got me back into the book as I page through it, and the smiles come to my face each time I do get back into it, mostly because of the fellas I was able to interview. How did it start? I was a professor at Union County College at the time, and something brilliant suddenly dawned on me one day. All the students go off on a spring break. Well, why can't professors go off on a spring break too? I have a good friend, Jim Lockhart, who was really interested in getting into spring training at that point in time. And we're both golfers. So the two of us decided that we would go on some spring training golf trips. We actually ended up at one point visiting every spring training stadium, both out in Arizona and in Florida. Now that's changed around because they built some new ones. But where were we in terms of the starting of this particular book? We were in Scottsdale. Loved to see the Giants in spring training, enjoyed it very much. I had a purpose beyond simply enjoying baseball and playing golf. I wanted to interview Felipe Alou for the Hall of Fame Major League Baseball book that we did. What's the title of it? I forget my own titles here sometimes. Let me pull it out here. Shades of Glory. We were interviewing Felipe Alou for Shades of Glory. Had a very good interview, a good time with him. If any of you know Felipe, I'm sure you know what I'm saying. And we walked out of the clubhouse, out to the ramp out there, and a tall fellow saw us coming out, and he said, "Fellas, what were you doing?" And we explained what we were doing, and he got into a conversation that made me stand up and listen carefully, and my friend Jim Lockhart knew right away what was going to happen. I said to Jim afterwards, when we finished our conversation with this tall fella, "There's a book there to be written." The tall fellow was Mike Murphy. Mike, I think, yeah, most of you know who Mike Murphy was, I think. Yes? I'm asking.
Yes. Yes.
Got my class out here. Let me, and again, maybe I'm playing to the choir here, but let me read you something. Let's see where it is in this book. Miguel Angel Murphy, Murph, San Francisco Giants bat boy, 58-59, clubhouse assistant manager, 60 to 79, clubhouse manager, 1980 to the present. Well, the present there was about, 2011, I think it was. do the arithmetic on that, and you could see that I would be interested immediately in who Mike Murphy was. And he got into a little bit about what he had done as that long-serving clubhouse manager. And he talked about Ed Logan, who had preceded him as a clubhouse manager. And again, if you do the arithmetic here with me for just a second, let's get back to that page. Edward Joseph Aloysius Logan, Mr. Logan for Murph. New York Giants, New York Yankees clubhouse gopher, 1920s. New York Giants assistant clubhouse manager, 1933, 1946. New York Giants San Francisco clubhouse manager, 1947, 1979. Well, I knew I had something special. I had written several books, but this one was going to be a good one. I knew right from the beginning, because where it was going to take me, that journey. So that's how it started. I suppose my next stop, I somehow sneaked an interview with Peter McGowan, who was the owner of the Giants at that point in time, and he said yes when I presented him the idea that I wanted to do a book on Mike Murphy. And I couldn't have done it without getting his okay, because I couldn't have gotten to all these guys without Peter McGowan, opening the doors for me to all of those guys. And then when I got into it, I discovered not just Murph, but as I said, I just discovered Ed Logan, his predecessor. And here, listen to this one. Let me get back here for a second. I want to give you the dates. Now I'm not finding the page that I was just on. Here we go. Fred Wheatley Hogan. I label him Father Fred. That's Ed Logan's father. Our Ed Logan, who I think a lot of you know, that's his grandpa. New York Giants clubhouse gopher, 1889, 1890. New York Giants clubhouse manager, 1890, 1946. New York Highlanders Yankees clubhouse manager, 1903, 1946. So obviously I had something special to start to get into. That's how it started. In effect, I was, I think, doing something that I never expected I would do, and I don't think anybody else has been able to do, to get into that place, the baseball clubhouse, that was a silent place. You know the line, what you say here, what you do here, what you hear here, you don't take out of here. Well, I was fortunate enough to be able to take a lot of stuff out of, and I'm going to read a couple of my favorite stories that came from that journeying. But the word longevity comes to mind. What I just read to you, it's to me, it was unbelievable at the time, and still is, that these men could have the time that they had managing the clubhouse. I've got another word down here, a little phrase, masters of ceremony. That's what they were in the clubhouse, masters of ceremony. Or they were orchestra conductors, conducting a baseball orchestra. So that's the start of my journey. And again, I'm not going to say anything that's going to surprise you, although mentioning one half of this duo may upset some people, but the two greatest teams in the history of baseball, in terms of their time in baseball, where they were when baseball started, one of them is the New York Giants, obviously. And again, you guys know that history. And the other one is the New York Yankees. Both of them were present at the creation in terms of the Giants team and when it came into being, in terms of the Yankee team when it came into being. Well, just as another reference point here, how about Michael Joseph Sheehy, Silent Pete for Fred Logan, I wish he were Fred Hogan, 1927, 1985 in the Yankee clubhouse in one management side or another. So again, that longevity comes into play. Where do we go next? Well, I'll tell you, let me give you a couple of the special stories that I picked up in my journeying into this group of players that I met with. And I think it's as good a way as any to feature tonight the people who spoke to me. Conversation, it says on the front of the book. Well, let me share with you a couple of conversations, some of my favorite stories that came out of this business. How about Sam McDowell?
Sudden Sam.
You know who Sam McDowell was, huh? Sudden Sam. Here, listen to this one. Sam McDowell, as a giant, quickly turned heartbreak to hearty laughter because the trade that sent Gaylord Perry to the Indians sent McDowell to the Giants. If Gaylord is the better-known baseball Hall of Famer in Cooperstown, Sudden Sam is clearly in the Murph's funniest moments of my years in San Francisco Hall. Everybody remembers Sudden Sam. When you talk to roommate Mike McCormick, you can feel the smile come across the phone lines. Francis Xavier Healy remembers him especially well. The then Giants catcher, later to be an outstanding broadcaster, and Murph and the newly acquired Sam McDowell were drinking beer in a San Diego hotel in front of a tank where comely young ladies were swimming in as mermaids, separated from the starting ball players only by a glass. Mike McCormick remembers that his roommate liked to drink. So does everyone else who knew Sam McDowell in his baseball days. McCormick also remembers that it only took one. Murph left the mermaids for a few moments, came back and found Healy alone at their table. In his absence, apparently the one drink had been had because Murph looked up at the tank, looked back at Fran, looked again at the tank, saw someone swimming with the young ladies, and said, "Holy shit, Fran, who is that? The guy looks familiar." Nowhere in any possible description of the job that Miguel Angel Murphy held might there have ever been a clause requiring him to fish a team pitcher out of a mermaid tank, dry him off, and get him back to his baseball business. But that is what he did for Sudden Sam that day. Huh? Now, you know, I mean, stories like that are so precious. Huh? A couple of others. Most of you, I think, know, you're familiar with Ernie Lombardi. Yes?
Yes.
Well, I won't give you any background on Ernie, but I think you know where I'm going to go with this, or where Ed Logan went with this. This is one of Ed's good ones. Huh? Let me see. Oh, I went to the wrong page.
54, 5-4.
55.
Okay.
54. Somebody's got my book, huh?
Signed it for me.
Ernie Lombardi, the schnoz, huh? Ed Logan. I'm always pushing Ernie Lombardi for the Hall of Fame. He's discriminated against because he couldn't run. But no hitter who ever lived was as good as him. He hit everything, everywhere. He was a great catcher, too. Had huge hands and a rifle arm. He'd grab an outside fastball, and Ed says, honestly, in his bare hand, and throw the guy out at second without ever having got off his haunchers. Think about that for a second. Huh? There's a Negro League player, a great catcher, whose name is presently escaping me. I love the guy. They used to say that he. Oh no, I'm off on the wrong page here. It's not a pitcher. It's Cool Papa Bell. Cool Papa could run so fast that when he hit a ball through the pitcher's legs, it hit him in the back when he slid into second for a double. I mean, now that's a little bit of hyperbole, and maybe this is hyperbole too from Ed Logan, But Ed Logan was a, a honest guy and an accurate reporter. Here, but oh, his running. I'll never forget the first time he bunted. It was in Ebbets Field. We had men on first and second. Pee Wee Reese, the Dodgers shortstop, always played Ernie in left field. He and the third baseman would have a conversation out there with the left fielder. Ernie bunted. It was a line drive for anybody else. Everybody in the park, including the Dodgers, were in hysterics. Pee Wee Reese fielded the ball in short left and relayed it to the second baseman, who threw to first, and Ernie beat it by an eyelash. The place went crazy. You think it was Babe Ruth hitting a home run. Another good story, another good conversation. Let me try one more on you. Let's see.
Larry?
Yes.
We got a few Yankee fans here. Can you give us a Pete Sheehy story?
Give you a Yankee story?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have to search around for a little bit, but let me give you this one first, because this was one of my favorite ones. And this is Ed Logan again. During those years, you would get team autographed baseballs where guys would sign the balls. Part of the team's deal with the clubhouse guy is that he would buy baseballs. He would get the players to sign them, and he would turn around and sell them. In those days, he wouldn't make much money, but that was the deal. Eddie Logan is in the clubhouse. They had the baseballs in the boxes in the middle of the room. He would say, "Sign the balls, boys. Sign the balls, fellas." Some guys would sign them, and there would be some who wouldn't. The clubhouse guy could probably sign everyone's autograph. You want a little Yankee story? There are so many unauthentic Babe Ruth baseballs out there with Ruth's signature on them, because Pete Sheehy or the Fred Logan both could imitate Ruth's signature. Now come back to, some guys would sign them and there would be some who wouldn't. The clubhouse guy could probably sign everyone's autograph just as well as they could. Logan was pressuring them to sign the balls. All of a sudden, down in the corner, I think it was Gary Matthews, you hear, "Hey, Logan, sign my balls." Logan turns around and says, "I would if I had a white pen." Said pen, a white pen. So it's those kind of stories that just, connected me in so very special ways to these clubhouses and to the managers who manage those clubhouses. You want a Yankee story beyond the one I just told you about Babe Ruth? I'm going to have to search a little bit here, because I wasn't ready for this one, but let's see. Pete.
All right, Larry, while you're searching, the book, I know it's not new, but it's very interesting, and some of the clientele here might want to purchase it. What's the best way?
Best way is to do it through the publisher, St. Johann Press. I don't have a.
I will send that out to
You can
anybody.
pull that up, yeah.
Ed, what did it feel like to see your dad and grandfather in print? Your mic is off.
Turn it on.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, no, that was great because that documented my family, and Larry did research on my grandfather that I had no idea about. I didn't even know his middle name, and Larry came up with that. I had tried to find out over the years, Fred Logan, there must be 2,000 Fred Logans in the United States, not Frederick Wheatley Logan. And the Wheatleys apparently were some big horse race people at the turn of the century. I don't know, Victorian, whatever they were. So when Larry came up with stuff, I filled in my life history. It was amazing, just amazing.
He was your Ancestry.com, huh?
Yeah. And of course, I passed that book around to everybody. Everybody in the family has a copy. It's like a family Bible,
Barry, is Ed in the picture with Larry and you?
Is Ed in the picture with Larry and Felipe?
No, in Barry's picture of you in the at
Yeah,
Cooperstown.
Rich McCabe was in there. I saw Richie
Barry,
McCabe.
who's in the picture?
I don't know who's in the
Oh,
picture
Rich
because I don't
McKay?
know what picture you're referencing.
No, Barry has a picture. Barry, who's in the picture? You got to talk, Barry.
Okay. Rich McCabe, Ed Logan, and Larry Hogan.
Nice. Yeah, that was at Cooperstown. That was a very.
We were signing the book up there.
Right.
And you have not seen Rich McCabe in how long?
Oh, years and years. I don't even know if he's still alive.
No,
Is he?
he's not with us.
Yeah,
anymore.
I think he's gone. But when we went to the book signing at the Hall of Fame, Larry had called ahead and used his juice, and we get this secret elevator and we go up to the second floor where the archives are. And here the lady brings out my grandfather's hat, and it was like Funkin' Wagnalls, you know. It was in a hat box. You had to put gloves on and look at it. And I had heard about that hat since I was 5 years old. It was a family legend. Didn't know how to believe it. I actually saw the hat. And in the band, it had Fred Logan's name in it. And apparently his nickname was Duke, which my cousin tells me. I never heard that, because he died when I was only like 6 years old. So I really hardly ever knew him. And then here Larry's telling me this whole history of my family. And it was better than going on, the website for to trace your family.
I remember that picture of you with the gloves. It was like you holding the Stanley Cup almost.
Yes,
The white
it
gloves.
was just amazing. And we took pictures of it, and then they put it back in the archive. So the deal there was, and still is, for the Hall of Fame to do a clubhouse managers, display, which they have yet to do. And then
Well, you were able to, Ed, to put the hat on.
Yes,
I remember.
Yes.
Yeah, that was so special of him.
It was amazing, really amazing.
Really
Then we went
was.
down, we looked at the rings. They have a big display of all the Giants World Series rings. And there was the one that my father wore for the 1954 World Series. He didn't wear that one, but I mean, that's the one that he had. So that was amazing too. But it was like, hey, going to Valhalla. It was just amazing. And Larry did all this. The research was amazing, all the way back to the beginnings of the Yankees, the beginnings in New York, in the tenements, even where he lived, addresses I had no idea about. Just amazing.
Oh, it was a wonderful moment for me, and I know it was a wonderful moment for Ed too. I'm looking, let me see if no, that's too many. I won't find it. Well, here, this goes on a little bit at length, but it's a fun story. One of the best people that I spoke to was Tony Kubek. I was looking for stories for Pete Sheehy, and I went to Tony. I didn't know what I was going to get, but it became one of my best interviews. And here's Tony talking about the locker room at Yankee Stadium. Casey's locker was to the left as you came in, and Crissetti's locker was there. And the bats to the right of the door, batting practice bats and game bats ready to go out. Casey's door to the left. Casey had a skin rash of some sort. And one time Pete came by our lockers, Boyer, Richardson, Charlie Keller, and Kubek in that area. Look at what I got for Casey, says Pete. He can't have his uniform sweatshirt up against his skin. He has this silly skin rash. It is all red. And Casey wouldn't come out. He had these stupid long johns, one piece with a trap door in the back. Actually, bottom so you could take a dump. Look at what I got for Casey. He showed them to the locker room, and they were red, like Santa Claus. I guess Casey wore them under his uniform. You never saw the red. But then Pete would bring them out. He is wearing them. He is wearing them. And he wore them for weeks. Charlie Keller was there. Charlie Keller was like King Kong. He would laugh. He couldn't stop laughing. Every time Pete went in there and washed them after every game, Casey would have to put them on this white, stupid salve. So, stories like that, again, just built the pleasure and fun for me. I could, no, I'm not going to throw any more stories at you. You have to go buy the book is what you have to do.
Larry,
Larry,
why don't we do this? Why don't you field some questions about the book, and then we'll move on to the other two topics for the evening. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Anybody have a question for Larry? The floor
Yeah,
is
so
yours.
Larry, the thread of the book is that all four of the clubhouse managers are linked together. In other words, my grandfather hired my dad hired Murphy, my grandfather hired Pete Sheehy. They're all linked together. That's how the whole thing works.
Yeah, no, that linkage was something that was just startling to me. At the beginning of this, I read the time span that was there. We went down the times that they spent in the clubhouse. And, it was something that was passed down in a way that I don't think was there anywhere else in baseball. And the last person, Murph, was really like a son to Ed Logan. Ed considered him that in terms of how he treated him, at least, but we've got the real son with us tonight.
Larry, I don't know if you know the answer to this. I know that, out in San Francisco, Murphy is, of course, idolized and is, probably some kind of plaque for him. There's nothing on the Logans. Do you know if in Yankee Stadium is Pete honored? Out there
That's
in
the name of
the
the. That's
Yeah,
the name
they
of the
do. I think they've named the clubhouse after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
I think it's the Pete Sheehy Clubhouse.
Yeah.
You know what I found interesting, Ed and Eddie, and Dr. Hogan? It's so interesting, and I know, speaking with Ed many times, and Roy McKercher, who was the first Giants bat boy there, anyone that, and even Patrick Quinlan, everybody called Eddie Logan Mr. Logan.
So did Mike Murphy.
And I said everybody.
Yeah.
It was always Mr. Logan. It wasn't Eddie or Ed or whatever, Mr. Logan.
Ed Logan, how did your grandfather get the job at the Polo Grounds?
That's a good question, and only Larry can answer that because that's way before my time.
Okay, Larry?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, there was a star player with the Giants, the 1889, 1890 frame. And he said one day to this kid that was hanging around, go get me a sandwich. And he went and got him a sandwich. And that was his kind of entree into. He became a gopher in the clubhouse and then, moved up to be the clubhouse manager across the next several years. Ended up with both teams, the Highlanders and the Yankees, when they became the Yankees, and stuck with the Giants all those years.
Interesting thing is, Pete Sheehy went on to modern times, and he was given a plaque or a monument or some such out in left field or center field in Yankee Stadium. There was never anything from my grandfather because, out of sight, out of mind. He died in 1946. So I don't know where he stands in the Yankee archives, but Larry does because he's done all that research.
Well,
I was wondering if either Ed or Larry had any contact with the Kawano brothers. A remarkable story because one was the clubhouse boy for years for the Cubs and the other one with the Dodgers.
no, I've never had any contact with them. The work that I was doing, I just focused on the fellas that I focused on, didn't stretch out into that area.
Right.
And in terms of...
Hey, you mentioned in the book, and it's an interesting story, maybe you can go through it again, Ed's grandfather, he had an interesting repartee with John McGraw, and he and John had a little game they used to play. Could you talk about that? That tells you a lot about McGraw, too.
I know the story you're referring to. It's just not there right now. Ed, do you remember that story?
Well, I'm thinking my dad he was a kid in the clubhouse, and he used to play with McGraw. And then and also, you know, my dad and my grandfather had the clubhouses at the same time, the Yankees and the Giants. When one was out of town, they were the other, you know, they were in town with the in-town team. And my dad talks about playing cards with Babe Ruth. And then Babe Ruth sending him, you know, out for soda or something, and then he would tip him twice, whatever the soda was. But he did play cards. You know, McGraw was a tough guy, from what I understand. My dad had many, many stories, and where it is. And Larry, I don't know did you hear the tapes that I think Steve still has? When they got out to San Francisco, my dad was interviewed like 3 hours on tapes, unexpurgated. And then there was this big write-up in Volume 1, Number 1 of the Giants magazine. And he said a lot about McGraw in those tapes. I would love to have those things made available, you know, edited. But they certainly should be in an archive somewhere, because you know, it was a real life thing of what went on, and there was a lot to it. And you know, none of this stuff came out until that book Ball 4. Ball 4 kind of opened the floodgates, but you wouldn't hear it outside from my dad, and you wouldn't hear it from Murphy. I'm not sure about Sheehy, because I never met him, but it just wasn't the thing, you know. You know, what's said here is done here is left here. And there was a lot of that. They were into gambling and you know, cards and smoking, and it was a whole different. You can see it in the 1930s and 40s movies. They're always smoking, always gambling, always playing cards. It was a different world, and the players themselves were basically blue collar. They were not college grads, and they didn't have agents and any of that stuff, right, Larry? They were just good old boys.
True. Yeah. No, it's a big difference, obviously, between back then and today. I'm trying to think of the McGraw story, though. And it involved McGraw somehow or other, I don't know the exact circumstances, but McGraw giving a quarter to the young man.
No, the story is, and I have it on tape, the story is that Eddie Logan, like his sons just said, he would hang around outside McGraw's office. And every day McGraw would come out, here you go, young man. He'd give him a nickel. And then one day, I guess he got the gumption to ask him, Mr. McGraw, can I have a quarter? He turned around and gave him a nickel. That's in that.
That's the story, Steve.
On those tapes. There's a lot of, I mean, those tapes are, I mean, your father had a blonde in the bathroom or the clubhouse, whatever the hell it was. And he was getting ready to have some fun with her. And Mel Ott, who was his favorite, as you always say, walks in. This blonde is flabbergasted, and she runs out. And your father tells Mel Ott what happened. And he says, why didn't you tell me? I wouldn't have come in. But when Eddie Logan Sr. tells the stories with a little bit of cursing in there, it's
oh yeah, a lot.
Yeah, a lot. I should say. It was. I haven't listened to them in so long. I did find them. I have them, but
it's the tale of the rubbing tables. You know, Doc Bowman's rubbing tables.
And signing all of Alvin Dark's balls for Alvin Dark. Probably very few Alvin Dark autographs.
Well, Bobby Weinstein, my predecessor as a bat boy, was Willie Mays autographer, big time. And then DeRocher, we had a rubber stamp because he didn't want to sign it, so we rubber stamped it. Now my dad had special balls that everybody signed, but not all. I mean, he told me, if you want the real thing, I got the real thing in my equipment closet, but don't bug the ball players. You know, I get you the real thing.
And can you tell us about the convenience department above the left field stands that somebody actually did?
Oh yeah, that was the Schwabs, Matty and Rose Schwab and their son Jerry. I stayed in there overnight many a time. It was right under, just like a 1.5 bedroom apartment, right under the stands.
Unbelievable. Was there television in there?
Yeah. Oh sure. And then Matty had, and then under the rest of the stands, where you know, Bobby Thompson's home run hit on top of the stand, and under the rest of the stand, were these places where all the different soil and so forth, and grain and rocks and everything that Matty put out, as part of his groundskeeping thing. So it always had that certain smell, that kind of soil smell under there,
One more question for Larry regarding the book before he talks about the Negro Leagues.
So Larry's is still on Amazon or no?
Yeah, it's still up on Amazon. Yeah, and as I said, you can get it directly from the publisher, Saint Joanne Press. Yeah, I just checked a little bit ago and I saw it on Amazon.
I had a copy that was signed. I had a number of copies, but one that was signed by Willie and Mike, and I don't know, somebody in my family's got it. I don't know what happened to it, but it was actually signed on the front cover.
Probably on eBay.
Yeah, probably.
Now, I remember the night, Ed, when that was signed, when Willie was, what was the name of the restaurant that was the gathering place in Scottsdale?
Don and Charlie's.
Yeah, it was Don and Charlie's.
Yeah, that's right. And we were out that night together and you went over and Willie signed it.
Well, Larry, tell them really quickly about the time we did the book signing at the Hall of Fame. So Larry gets up on the stage. They had a special presentation, and Larry's going to present the book. So he gets up there and he tells about that book, and then he says, "Hey, take it, Ed." And I had to take it. I had a tap dance, and I brought my, bat boy uniform, whatever. So we did a whole thing, and then we went outside, and it was, Larry, they were celebrating the Giants World Series. You win the World Series, the next spring you're celebrated at the Hall of Fame, right? So it was like Giants Day at the Hall of Fame. Perfect timing. Mm-hmm. And then we of course went to right outside the bookstore, and we do all the signing. There were a lot of people from San Francisco, and they were scarfing up the book.
And is there a way to sign a petition to get your grandfather and father in the Hall of Fame? And part two of this question is: do you, with the same kind of petition, to have Willie Mays Field at Oracle Park, a formal petition to give to the Giants to set those things in motion for your grandfather, for your father, and for Willie Mays?
Yes. So, Willie and I are almost exactly 10 years apart. I was 16 as his bat boy. He was 26, and he is now 86. So I will be 80.
He's going to be 90 in May.
He's going to be 90, and you're going to be 80.
He's going to be 90. I'm going to be 80.
Yeah.
So as far as I know, I'm like the oldest living bat boy.
No, Jim Ryan may have you by a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was a senator. He was not.
You're by the Giants.
The Giants, yeah.
Ed, you remember this book?
I know it well. And I knew Garth. I knew his parents.
Larry, have you ever seen this book?
No, I don't think I have. What's the title? What am I looking at? I can't.
Bat Boy of the Giants.
Oh,
I had that book. Garth Carew, right?
Correct.
Garth Carew.
And he writes about the 221 Club.
Yes, that was an
47.
extremely popular book.
1947 or 48. 221 homers.
47.
I had that book.
I book in fourth grade at a book fair.
Garth Carew died early.
Yes,
he did. He was a naval officer. He was a pilot, and he went off an aircraft carrier and crashed. But he, I idolized him. That book was very popular in the public, not just baseball fans.
Oh yeah.
I'm not trying to plug a book here, but I guess I am. The anthology, and Ed Logan has a essay in there, but on the Polo Grounds, the one that recently came out, and there is an article in there by Dave Butwin, who followed up, and I can't remember all of the details, but he was also fascinated by that Bat Boy of the Giants book and followed up, and I think talked to Garth Carew's brother about it too. So that I found, because I had the book when I worked on the first book I did on the Polo Grounds, and found the follow-up stuff to be really interesting about Carew.
His parents' names were Claude and Annie Babe. We used to call her Annie Babe. They weren't aunt and uncle, but we called them aunt and uncle. That's how close we were.
All right, Larry, you want to start talking about your other passion? and expertise?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
All yours.
This is not a Giants story, but a story came to mind when we started talking about the lack of recognition for our clubhouse managers, for Ed and for Fred. Murph's got a bar named after him out in Candlestick, out in AT&T. I tried for years with the Yankees to get Pop Lloyd recognized at Yankee Stadium. I found out that they had a file with all of the stuff that I had written and other people had written in as well. Pop Lloyd opened up Yankee Stadium in 1930 to Negro League Baseball. So the house that Ruth built, Pop opened. No way, they're not going to recognize Pop at all. I finally shrugged my shoulders and said, I've got to go on to another direction. So, it's a tough road to ride here in terms of getting the recognition that you think they should get. Let me talk just briefly about some of the Negro Leaguers who became major leaguers and played for the Giants. Willie, of course, is the first to talk about. Birmingham Black Barons, 1940. When does he come to the Giants? 1949, 1948 with the Birmingham Black Barons. I got thinking about Willie and the whole notion of his greatest moment. And I think most people would say that incredible catch that he made. But there's another moment that's awfully great that came to mind too. The greatest pitching game in the history of baseball. And again, everybody here I think knows what I'm talking about. Marichal versus Spahn, 16 innings. And Willie had a great moment in that game too, the home run that he hit in the 16th inning to bring that to an end. It's often said, I got a couple of other references. I want to talk about Monty in particular, but it's often said that these great major leaguers learned to play their baseball in the Negro Leagues. And I think that's true in lots of ways. Campy, Newcomb, Willie, Ernie Banks, you go down the list, and all of them were Negro Leaguers who came up to the majors. Ray Noble. I got a funny story on Ray Noble here. And this gets to something that Ed and I talked a lot about, and that was the whole integration that the Giants were in the forefront of in lots of ways. Yes, the Dodgers, but very much the Giants too. Eddie Stanky came into the locker room regularly, of course, and he would say to Noble, "What do you say, Bushman?" Well, Noble didn't know what Bushman meant, what Stanky's reference was. And after this, he went on for a while. Noble sought out his fellow black teammate, Hank Thompson. And when he learned from Thompson what Stanky was saying to him, he took things into his own hands, indeed into his own arms. Noble went over to Stanky's locker and grabbed him by the collar. Stanky started to laugh, and Noble picked him up and kind of hung him on a hook. And he says, "You don't call me Bushman no more, huh?" Stanky replied, "Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I was only playing." After that, there was no more Bushman story. When Stanky came in, he'd say, "Hello, Noble." That ended the Bushman thing. Integration was not an easy thing to embrace back then, but the Giants in so many ways did. Let me talk about Monty for a second or two. I was looking up some statistics here, and the Giants sent him down in 1950. He had played for a while with them, and then they, were tight or whatever, and he went down to Jersey City. 18 games, 510 batting average, 10 home runs, 33 RBIs. Monty didn't stay very long in Jersey City. He was back up to the Giants. 1951, I wonder what Campy's stats were for that year. Monty's were just incredible. 312, 24 home runs, 124 RBIs. I guess of all of the Negro Leaguers that I connected to, Monty was the one that I was closest to. He's just an incredibly wonderful guy. My wife used to say that if he ever got a divorce, if we ever got a divorce, she'd go looking for Monty to be her companion. A story from Monty, one that I like a whole lot. He and Hank Thompson were in a hotel in Tokyo in '53 when the Giants were doing their tour of Japan. And in the hotel with them was a fellow named Ben Webster. Ben Webster was one of the great saxophonists of all time, played with the Ellington Band for a while, and he was a big man. And it happened that the three of them came out of the hotel at the same time, Hank, Monty, and Ben Webster. So they hailed a cab together, and Ben got in the front, and Hank and Monty were in the back. Webster says to the driver, let's go to such and such a place. The driver hits the accelerator, the gas pedal, like it was a bat out of hell heading down the street. Webster says to him, "Cabby, slow down." And Monty and Ben in the back seat, kind of laughing and saying, "Ben, he doesn't understand English." In Spanish, Webster says to him, "Slow down, slow down." And Hank and Monty in the back seat again says, "Ben, he doesn't understand Spanish." So Ben turns to the cab driver and says, "Cabby, MF, slow down." And the cabbie slowed down. Monty says that was universal language, understood anywhere. So, yeah, great Negro League players coming up to the Giants and contributing to the Giants through those years. And again, playing a role in integrating Major League Baseball in the way that they did.
Did you have any connections at any time with Ed Lucas?
No, I never.
You know who Ed Lucas is? The blind journalist.
Wasn't he the little guy in the Giants who?
The blind journalist.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know who you mean. I met him once in an affair, but I never had any extensive contact with him.
Okay, because he was very close to Monty Irvin as well early on.
Ed Lucas, I spoke with a couple of weeks ago, and he said that they're making a movie about his life.
How's he doing? I spoke to him about 2 months ago. I think his son is promoting the movie. That would be a tremendous story if they do it. I mean, it's not a wonderful story, but it is it ended up being a real good story.
We at ESPN did a story about him a couple of years ago. If it's online, I'll look now. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Willie, in 1 minute, could you explain to some people who don't know about what happened in 1951 to Ed to change his whole life?
Well, he had an accident and went blind, and Phil Rizzuto was a tremendous supporter of Ed Lucas. And Ed Lucas, I mean, this is the really nickel summary. There's much more to the story, but Ed Lucas went into journalism and covered baseball, and for many, many years covered the games without being able to see them. And he's really an inspirational story. And Rizzuto took him under his wing. And for many years, Rizzuto also had a benefit golf tournament for the St. Joseph School for the Blind in New Jersey, which had been so good to Ed and Ed, a mutual relationship.
And he lost his eyesight.
Gary, can you hear me?
Yes, Frank.
He didn't mention Monty Irvin served in the state legislature in New Jersey, and Hank Thompson, after his playing days, was convicted and went to jail for armed robbery. Is there anything he knows about that?
I remember he did that because he didn't. It's very sad.
Very sad.
He
Cab
never
driver.
made much money, and he was a great ball player.
Just an aside to what Willie was saying, we had
Monty Irvin served in the legislature as a politician, right?
Yep.
Did he serve, or I thought he ran and lost?
Yeah, I don't remember him serving in the.
Yeah, I think he ran in 1952.
Yeah.
And he lost, And I think his wife that year did an interview in Cosmopolitan magazine about what it's like to be a ball player's wife. But other than that race in '52, I don't think he ever really served.
And then what happened to Hank Thompson after his jail days? Does anyone know?
Well, he got killed. I mean,
Yeah.
he went to prison, and then what, did he die of a heart attack, or he might have even been killed? And
I think he was shot down. Something rings a bell.
yeah,
Yeah,
was shot.
he was shot somewhere outside of a bar in Chicago.
That's
or
correct. Something like that.
Awful.
the interesting
Yeah.
thing about him is that he and Willard Brown had come up to the St. Louis Browns the same year as Robinson and Doby, but Bill DeWitt was running the Browns and was a Rickey disciple, and he thought he could build attendance, but they only lasted a few weeks.
Hey, Willie, did you know that Ed Lucas has been in every Yankee home opener since 1956, except last year when they're, isn't that something amazing?
He really is. He's a sweet fellow.
And he knows the game. He knows the game.
Yeah.
The last thing he saw was the Thompson home run. He was playing baseball that day, got hit right between the eyes, and was blind ever since. And when he spoke to us, I'm sorry, Larry, just as an aside,
No.
he spoke to us, he said that George Steinbrenner allowed him and his wife to get married at home plate at Yankee Stadium, which was
Second marriage.
yeah,
Second
which
one.
was considered, people said bad things about Steinbrenner, and Lucas was like so grateful that he was allowed to get married at Yankee Stadium.
And
Larry,
he got
why don't you
custody of
continue?
his sons.
Yes. Larry, why don't you continue?
Well, hold on for just 1 minute because I'm going to get my computer coach and see if she can make this computer do what I really want it to do.
I will make an attempt to get, now that this movie, I will try to get Ed Lucas to speak for us.
Yeah, he'll do it. You have his
Gary?
number? You have his number?
Yes, Sam.
Do you mind if I share a 1 or 2 minute story about a Yankee who became a Giant?
No, not at all.
First of all, I'm honored to be among you. I'm the interloper Yankee fan in the room. I've known Gary for a long time, and I'm honored to be here. And thank you very much for the invitation. So the themes that I've heard today include how poor the ball players were, how much they drank, and may he rest in peace. Don Larson is one of the many players who we've lost in the last year. He died on New Year's Day this year. And the article about him included a discussion of his drinking. And this was a quote from Mickey Mantle. Don Larson had a startling capacity for liquor. The night before he pitched his perfect game, he went out drinking with Arthur Richmond, the publicist for the Yankees. And the next day, obviously, did what he did. He also, either that day or just a few days before, had received a court order from a Bronx Supreme Court judge saying that he owed $420 in alimony and child support to a woman nobody on the team even knew he was married to. And he was so broke on the day after the season ended, he had to beg the Yankees for enough money to get back home to California. So that was the nature of things back then. And as far as how, I mentioned the Giants, I did some research while we were talking here, and it turns out, I'm sure most of you know this, or many of you know this, but Don Larson became a Giant later in his career. Late in 1961, he was traded to the Giants, and in 62, I didn't know this, he had some very significant contributions to the Giants. There was a 3-game playoff in 62 that he pitched just 1/3 of an inning in. He relieved Marichal and got the credit for the win. And then he relieved him and successfully did that. Then in the 4th game of the World Series in 62, he pitched 1/3 of an inning, but it was the perfect time. He came up with 2 men on base, first and second. He walked Yogi Berra to load the bases, but then got Tony Kubek to ground into an out. The Giants scored next, and he got credited with the win in the 4th game of the 62 World Series.
Hey,
You're
Steve,
a Yankee fan.
Steve,
Yes.
maybe Sam needs a hat.
Gary, can I interject something, please?
Sure you can.
Sam, I know that that story has been repeated endlessly about Larson going out drinking the night before the perfect game. I was very good friends with Don Larson and Arthur Richmond, and Don wrote about it in his autobiography. He did not go out drinking the night before. And the reason for that is that he did not know if he was going to be pitching the next day. Nobody had been told, and the pitcher had not been selected. So he didn't drink. He and Arthur actually went home early. And as Arthur was putting Don into a cab to go back to where he was staying somewhere uptown, Don gave Arthur $1 and said, "Here, I want you to give this to your synagogue." So it was all of the Jews in New York praying for Don Larson that actually got that perfect game going. And Don Larson found out that he was pitching the next day when he walked into the clubhouse and found a baseball inside his shoe. That was the sign that the pitching coach had decided, or Casey had decided, that he would be pitching. So I try to set the story straight, because although Donnie could put the Christian Brothers brandy away, he was not drunk or hungover the day of the perfect game. And he would tell anybody that would listen to him that was, and frankly, he could have sort of soft pedaled that years later. I don't know, maybe he did, but his story was always that he wasn't drunk or hungover. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Hey, Sam, you're a big Yankee fan.
I am.
You know what? See if you can figure out the answer to this question. When they asked the Mick, what was his greatest moment at Yankee Stadium? Do you know what his answer was?
I'll probably smack my head when you tell me, but please go ahead.
The time I spent under the bleachers with Angie Dickinson.
Hey, Sam, you're now an honorary member.
Everybody's
And
a
I'm honored
Giant
to be
fan,
that.
Sam.
Thank you again.
So,
All
Sam,
right.
how many Yankees wound up over with the Giants, coaches included,
All time?
all
mean-
time?
Oh my.
But
There an answer to
certainly
that?
one from in the 50s and the 60s.
Well, that's a tough one. I don't know.
Freddie Fitzsimmons. I'm trying to think. Hank Bauer was
No.
Carmel.
not Bauer, but
Woodling.
the coaches.
Woodling. Gene Woodling, Duke Carmel.
Gene Woodling became a Giant?
No,
What?
Matt.
Oh, Matt, he's talking about Giant.
No, the Giants. There was a number of Yankees that came over.
Bobby
Came over.
Mercer.
As I remember, I'll have to do my research, but
Harry Whitfield, baby.
Who was the most significant Giant to come over to the Yankees? If you're a Yankee fan, I think
Johnny Mize.
Johnny Mize, yeah.
The
All
big
right, Larry,
cat.
you ready for me to turn this over to you?
Sure. We've
All right,
got
let's see
our
if we can
fingers
do this.
crossed with the,
I'm hitting share screen, and
okay,
you should be able to do whatever you have to do, I hope.
okay. Well, here, just before we try and get into that, the question was what I think about the Negro League stats becoming officially recognized by Major League Baseball as, Major League stats now. So this little video section deals with that in the way I want to deal with it. It's the end point of a documentary we did on the Negro Leagues. Can you see that?
No.
I don't. I don't know what to do with it.
Usually I hit the button that says share screen, and then whoever has done it in the past, like Stu, was able to navigate it.
Oh,
You have
wait,
to make
wait,
sure
there.
that the file that you're sharing is open on your desktop.
There it is.
There we go. Thank you, Perry.
There we go.
Thank you, Mrs. Hogan, and thank you, Perry.
We're in Cooperstown.
Mr. April.
sense that, you know, wasn't there, if we didn't love the game, we wouldn't have played it. Put the money on it.
Larry, we need more volume.
What's that?
I'm serious, ball player, so I'm smiling and having a good time. There's no question that this country and this Georgia.
Lost all the faces. What happened?
Now, this year is a year we're dedicating to 3 years off the field of play. So we can be an example again. And for Ray to come in this year, I think has much more meaning. It's a year of focus. Right now, I ain't financial what my biggest thrill was. But my biggest thrill came when? I said, yeah. And all of a sudden he said, your life has changed. I say, what do you mean my life has changed? You know how it is, sometimes you get some of them crank calls.
There's Willie right there. Yeah. That's.
You want to hear it?
He's using Mars's microphone.
On the committee, allowing me to smell the roses. My only question is, why did it take so long? I can see in the audience, I got quite a few friends, northeast, southwest, and these people have traveled a long way, and I want to thank each and every one for coming to Cooperstown to see me elected in the Hall of Fame.
Larry, I don't think this is as effective as you wanted it to be because we can't hear him.
And now?
Baseball love me.
It's over now, right?
I don't know. Was it working?
You're done.
Yeah.
So now,
Just
I'm going to say goodbye, and I hope, and I love you all. Maybe you never know how much I love you. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Yes, sir.
No, I don't know. Okay.
Larry, I put the link to that video in the chat, along with the link to the Ed Lucas one and one about Jerry Eisenberg, if anybody's interested.
Yes.
I guess is the beep going?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, the question was, of course, about the stats and what I felt about them. And I could have stopped the Dandridge clip there when he turns around, or doesn't quite turn around, but says, "What took you so long?" I think that's, you know, the operative phrase here. What took you so long? And it's kind of ironic in lots of ways, because it was Major League Baseball that paid the Hall $225,000 in 2003 for the study that we did, which produced the book that I referenced there earlier, Shades of Glory. And, you know, the record was made in that book. Wasn't me by myself. It was 9 other historians who researched into the history and went all the way back to back into the 19th century, and right up to the end of the Negro Leagues, and a little bit beyond the end of the Negro Leagues. And there were statistics in the back of that that were good statistics. It wasn't a total estimate of what the statistics were, but it was certainly a base out of which you had to draw the conclusion that these players were back there and they were laying down a good record, statistically speaking. So I think Ray, you know, in saying what he said, what took you so long, that's operative here in terms of the statistics. And everybody's pleased who's been into Negro League history at all. Even pleased in some ways with the support, well, not in some ways, in many ways, with the support that has come out of Major League Baseball across the last 15 or so years for the Negro Leaguers, support that's been vital to them in their declining years. But it would have been wonderful for them to have seen what happened just a month or so ago in terms of the record that they laid down, the recognition that it should have.
Larry, I know everybody has their opinion on the validity of the statistics, and you are, you know, you're not a normal person with this. You are an expert and a historian. Has the Hall of Fame or MLB approached you at all to work on this?
No, they haven't, and a couple of friends of mine suggested that that should be the case, but I'm not the right person to go to. I know the story of the Negro Leagues. I know the world that the Negro Leagues were a part of, but I was never into the statistics side of it. The key person there was Larry Lester, who should, and I think is going to be a part of the group that will decide the statistical compilation that'll go into the record. And a couple of other people as well have worked on that very extensively. The first person to do it was John Holloway, but John was well short of the mark that we've gotten now with Larry's work and with a couple of other Negro League historians who have focused on that aspect of the Negro Leagues.
You know, Larry, I don't know if this makes sense, and I'm not demeaning Horace Stoneham by any means. The Giants and Dodgers were huge in the beginning. And when Mays came up, he sent down Artie Wilson, I believe. And he was quoted as saying, "We have enough of them," rather than keep them. That's one. Seeing Ray Dandridge here, I mean, he really took the short straw on this. He was what they all say, including Monty Irvin, how great a player he was. Ray Dandridge came across Horace Stoneham a number of years later at some kind of an event and got right in his face and said, "You couldn't even give me 1 week."
Yeah.
That's really, I think, summarizes the story in a lot of their cases. You will never know.
Monty and Hank Thompson went to Stoneham at that point in time. And, you know, you're coming down in a tight pennant race and he's batting well
Correct.
over 330, 340, 350 with Minneapolis at that point in time. Goodness, I think he was Rookie of the Year in the International League in 1950 when the Giants signed him. And Stoneham, what Monty used to say, Stoneham says, "No, I just can't do it. We've got enough up here."
That's what he said.
Yeah.
So,
Ray used to say, you know, "I just wanted to have my cup of coffee in the majors."
That's what he said to him.
Yeah.
So Larry, going forward a little bit to Willie McCovey, I don't know if you've ever seen this. I've got it on the screen here, but this was September 21st, 1980. The Giants had Willie McCovey Day, and it ties into your book because right up here in the corner, which you probably can't see, is Willie McCovey retiring my father on the field the prior year. And I believe this was, I believe this was McCovey's retirement too. So a year before he had retired, my dad right on the field.
Special moment, Ed, yeah. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know if you noticed, but in the background up there in the stage when Ray was being inducted, there was Willie and there was Campy in the back.
Right in the corner, yep, saw him.
Yeah.
There is also one of these for Willie Mays, and I don't know if
There
either
it is.
one of these is in the Hall of Fame or whether Steve has either one of these as
No,
part of our archive.
Don't have that. Might be on eBay.
These are hard to find, and I had this thing framed.
Great picture. Great.
Yeah, and so the Negro Leagues, they paved the way for Willie McCovey, who is probably next to Willie Mays, my favorite guy too. And his personality was like Monty. Monty was a little smoother. Willie was more lively, but they were similar in my mind anyway.
Larry, what do you think they're actually going to do with the statistics? There's been all kinds of things. In your opinion, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I don't know how that's going to work. It's going to be, well, no, we're at a much better point now than we would have been 10 years if this happened. I really would have liked to have seen it happen 10 years ago, but the statistical work that's been done, across the last 10 years by Larry and by several other historians, I think makes the job much easier and much more accurate than it would have been 10 years ago. So, I'm hoping that that will happen.
Because one of the Monty Irvin, I think, becomes a 300 hitter career-wise, and Mays, they're talking about one more home run. So everything's kind of up in the air until they come up with a final solution to what they want to do.
Yeah, but there's been so much compiled in the last 10 years. Careful sorting through the black press. Everybody says the black press didn't cover everything. Well, they didn't cover everything, but they covered enough back there to have a very good picture of what these fellas were. And Larry has gone into extensively the black press. I would think that at this point in time, there probably isn't a box score that was in the black press that hasn't been recorded and ready for compilation into the major league records.
In lieu of Perry Barber's statement about Don Lawson not drinking the day before the perfect, things get taken out of context all the time. What about Alvin Dark as a player and a manager? Was he down and out racist, or was that taken out of context?
Who's that? Is that addressed to me?
Yes, Larry, yes. And elaborate on it as well.
Well, you know the story and what the Giants had. What did they do? They fired him the next year, I think. I don't know if he was a down and out racist, but he certainly said racist things in the context of that particular story. So,
Larry, I think I sent you a recent article, and this will raise an issue written by African Americans, something to the effect that the competition in the Negro Leagues wasn't up to the major leagues, and that was kind of a legend that it was. What's your thought on that?
the 1926 World Series, Red Greer pitches a no-hit, no-run game. It took another, how many years before that would even come close to being in the major leagues. There was quality right across. Look at the number, 17 Negro Leaguers. No, more than that, 27 Negro Leaguers now in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And, there was quality baseball being played regularly. Competition was there between the teams. I just don't think that that kind of assessment of Negro League baseball really gets into the heart and soul of what was being done back there.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that article.
Anybody else have any questions for Larry?
Larry, I have a question. how was the pitching in the Negro Leagues? Because generally we often hear about the prolific hitters. We don't hear too much about the pitchers outside of Satchel Paige.
Exactly.
Well, you know, there's one player that a pitcher who I think belongs in the Hall of Fame and hasn't made it, didn't make it for us, Bullet Joe Rogan. But
Satchel Paige.
Dick Redding, that's who I was referring to. I wasn't referring to Bullet Joe Rogan. Rogan made it in, but Dick Redding was just a great pitcher. Smokey, the Pittsburgh Courier did a poll in 1952 that asked questions of practically anybody who knew anything at all about the Negro Leagues. And Smokey Joe Williams got 22 votes and Satchel got 19 as the best. If you look at the numbers of pitchers now who are amongst the quality people who went into the Hall of Fame, there's a very strong number who were in there. It's a very strong sampling of what Negro League baseball was about. So I think I think one of the things that will happen is the statistics, when they're compilated into Major League Baseball, you'll have a much better sense of just the quality of pitching that was back there.
Do you feel that there's any players who are not in the Hall of Fame today from the Negro Leagues who should be put in?
Well, the two, I think, off the top of my head, Dick Lundy, a great shortstop, played a little bit of second base, Atlantic City Bacharach Giants and several other teams. He was Pop Lloyd's successor on the Bacharach Giants. And Dick Redding, Cannonball Dick Redding, who there's a record there of him facing up against several of the Giant teams and holding his own against them. And was comparable to Smokey Joe Williams back there. So there's two, Dick Redding and Dick Lundy. And, you'll ask somebody else who's into Negro League history and they'll come up with other people who they think should have gotten in and just didn't.
It's a tough topic because, like you said, there's other people that might have one or two others. Then you got Gil Hodges, Allie Reynolds, Vic Raschi, Eddie Lopez. I mean, these guys, nowadays, they'd be right in. Jeff Kent. We talked about him a couple of weeks ago. What happened there?
Phil Cavaretta?
Yeah, coach. Maybe as a coach, yeah. There's a lot of people out there that
coaches.
Well, we'll know next Tuesday. Tuesday is the announcement, right, guys?
But coaches are not eligible for the Hall.
Coaches are not eligible for the Hall.
No.
That's right.
That's a
So
shame.
Tuesday, it's coming out this week, the 26th.
That's
This
right.
year's-
6 o'clock.
Okay.
Well, you mentioned Allie Reynolds. Faye Vincent used to make a strong case for Allie Reynolds.
Now it's too late now. I mean, he was a starter, a reliever. He was like a machine. And it's before my time, but reading up on Allie Reynolds, Super Chief, that whole crew, Raschi, Reynolds, Lopez. I mean, come on. I know they were part of the Yankees, but so what?
Larry, a question about the importance of Ted Williams' induction speech, Negro Leaguers eventually being admitted to the Hall. What's your sense of what role the Williams speech had?
Huge.
Yeah, I think so too. And it came as a surprise. No one expected him to say that. We've tried to track down what it was or who it was that put that into him or where he went and got it. But yeah, I think it was very big and very surprising when it happened. But Williams was that kind of guy, I think.
You know what? Knowing the character, and a lot of us obviously don't know him personally, I think that came from Ted Williams.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I could be wrong. I don't think anybody put that in his cap.
Ted Williams also said that Willie Mays was the greatest ball player he's ever seen.
Well, Ted Williams was a Giant fan like the rest of us.
Yeah, and guess whose statues are in front of the stadium? And Willie Mays, and then around the corner, you got Willie McCovey, and then Juan Marichal.
And Cepeda and Perry. Got them all.
Yeah, got them all. So
Perry, they wanted to put a little waterfall coming out of his mouth, and they nixed that.
The spitball.
That's what they wanted to do.
Thank goodness they didn't put it coming from another body part.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
Yes.
Very good.
Larry?
Go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
Larry, you mentioned Faye Vincent. I don't know if any of you are aware of a book that Faye Vincent wrote called We Would Have Played for Nothing. And
Yes.
in that book, he actually quotes Bill Rigney, apropos of our meeting last week, among other great stars of the 50s and 60s. It's a worthwhile read if you ever get a hand on it.
Good book.
Larry, we can't thank you enough for spending an hour and a half with us.
Yeah.
Please come back and visit, and let's give it up for Dr. Larry Hogan.
It was a great experience for me. I learned a lot listening to all these Giants fans. And I just thank everybody for hosting me in the way that you have and for paying attention to Negro League baseball, but also, of course, those great clubhouse managers and Ed particularly. So good to see you again. And it's nice to know that this story will go on.
Larry, you have to go out on the porch with me and have Irish whiskey and cigars like we did up in the Hall of Fame.
Larry, you said at the beginning that we should maybe not clap for you. We'd have to wait. You very much earned it and deserve it. So thank you.
Okay.
Guys, we'll see everybody next Thursday with Alex Drude. And I will stay in here and close it out. But great seeing everybody. All of you stay
Good job, Gary.
healthy and well.
Thank you, Gary. It really worked well. You do a wonderful job of organizing. And I have to thank my computer coach, too.
Thank you, Mrs. Hogan.
Pause.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye, Gary. Thank you.
Good night, Gary. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, Sam. Bye,
See you
Perry.
on Saturday, Gary.
We will see you Saturday, Bill. Jeff, time to get up. Be good, guys.